All My Love to You, written by Just Thinking Drabbles, read by Arashi. One of Edelgard's favorite rituals between her and her wife Bernadetta was the moment the two of them were preparing for bed. It was a small, tender moment for them, and one they looked forward to immensely. Edelgard was happy to be able to spend time with the woman she loved most, and if that time included cuddling before they drifted to sleep in one another's arms, then how could she refuse? Bernie was lovely always, but especially when bathed in dim candlelight and reading aloud a story, including some of the ones she had written herself. Her voice was soothing, and Edelgard always felt all of her worries drifting away whenever she heard it. As she entered the room to their shared bedchambers, she found Bernadetta already there and relaxing on the bed, a book in her hand. She smiled at her as she began to unravel her hair and made her way to her wife, pressing a soft kiss onto her lips in greeting. "Hello, dear." Even after years of marriage, hearing the term of endearment made Bernie's cheeks tint a lovely shade of pink, and Edelgard couldn't help but think how adorable it looked on her.
"Welcome back, Elle,"
she replied, a smile on her face. Edelgard sat on the bed and grabbed her hand, pressing a gentle kiss to the back of it, before continuing. "How was your day?"
"Wonderful. I got to spend most of the day in the gardens writing, and Hubert stopped by for a bit to have lunch with me. Though, I did miss you."
It was Edelgard's turn to blush then. "I missed you as well. I'm glad that your day was wonderful, though," hummed Bernadetta, and gave her wife's hand a tight squeeze.
"What about you? How was your day?"
Edelgard sighed as she lazily rubbed her finger against Bernie's soft skin, the gentle movement a comfort to them both. "It was a bit stressful, I'm afraid. Trying to get everything sorted out after the war has been challenging, as I knew it would be, and, truthfully, all I wanted to do was be here with you." She looked up at Bernadetta then, and they both smiled at one another.
"You're here now,"
she responded, "and happy to be so." She leaned forward and pressed another kiss to her lips, hearing the content sigh that escaped Bernie's lips as she did, and hoped it would never end. She could spend hours here, simply basking in the company of the woman she loved most, though she suspected that Hubert would not approve, though right now such things were of no concern to her. Eventually, she did pull away, tucking a loose thread of hair behind her wife's ear and letting her fingers linger on her cheek for the barest of seconds before standing and walking towards her vanity. Despite how desperately she wanted to just fall into her lover's arms and fall asleep, she still needed to finish getting ready for bed.
"I can do that,"
Bernadetta offered, as Edelgard pulled out her hairbrush and began to brush through the long white tendrils.
If you want, that is."
"Oh, yes, I would love that," she agreed readily, and handed the brush off to her once she approached the vanity. She loved when Bernadetta did her hair. She was always so kind and gentle, brushing through each strand with careful consideration and love. Edelgard relaxed in her touch and closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the day melt away in her presence. As she brushed through her hair, Bernadetta began to sing, a simple tune that was unfamiliar, but certainly not unwelcome. It was peaceful, and the close proximity to her wife made her heart flutter just as it did when they had first started dating. She remembered Bernadetta being slightly more timid around her then, and she couldn't blame her. Things like romance and being in a relationship were new to them both, and neither of them had the slightest clue how to navigate their new feelings. None of the other Black Eagles were of much help either. They tried, of course, but all of their advice often felt a little on the side of strange at best. She admired their desire to help, though. In the end, as they spent more time together, it became more natural and comfortable, and soon all she wanted to do was be near her. When she wasn't by her side, she was thinking about her, so much so that she had drifted to thoughts of her when having a meeting with Hubert, and when he had asked her if something was wrong, she simply waved away his concerns, telling him that she was just a little tired. Yet she was still sure her blush had given her away, as Hubert was far too perceptive not to have noticed. He was polite enough not to inquire further, thankfully, but he did have a small smile on his face as he turned back to his papers. She brought her gaze back to meet Bernadetta's own in the mirror, and wondered, as she continued brushing through her hair, if she too thought of her. Did said thoughts distract her from her duties too? The thought of her wife also thinking of her brought another smile to her face. It did not go unnoticed by Bernadetta, and she tilted her head curiously, a chuckle escaping her lips as she said,
"Everything okay?"
"Everything is perfect. I'm just thinking about how much I love you."
"Oh!"
her wife squeaked, and then, quieter,
I love you too."
When she finished brushing through her hair, she began to play it, her nimble fingers careful, as they crossed each strand over and over the other until it was finally braided. Afterwards, she tied a purple hair tie around it and placed it over her shoulder.
"Finished,"
she announced happily, and Edelgard admired the work she had done in the mirror for a moment before standing and pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Beautiful as ever, dear." Bernadetta returned to the bed as Edelgard changed into her nightwear, and then joined her, laying her head against her shoulder as she got beneath the covers. "What are you reading tonight?"
"A fairy tale. Something about a princess and her fellow knight falling in love. I haven't gotten very far, but I like what I've read of it."
"Would you mind reading some of it to me too?"
Certainly,"
her wife replied, and turned to the page she had left off on. Edelgard once again closed her eyes and listened to her voice, wrapped up in the warmth of the sweet scent that was undeniably Bernadetta's. She felt at peace. The woman was her everything, her love, her light, her home. Nothing else mattered when she was around. Soon she felt her exhausted body slipping into sleep, but before she completely drifted, she mumbled a soft, "I love you." At first, she hadn't been sure it was understood, seeing that she was nearly asleep. But then she heard the thud of the book closing, and felt the gentle brush of lips against the top of her head.
"I love you too, Elle,"
she whispered, voice soft and full of so much love. Hearing the words affirmed to her, Edelgard snuggled closer and allowed herself to finally rest.